So let's move and get deeper into the quality of the wheat, and that's another one that it's important to explain in a way that people will understand when we talk about protein quality versus protein quantity.
As you know, we have officially 6 classes of wheat in the US, and then hard red spring wheat is one of the high protein wheat class, and then it is known for high protein and also high quality protein. And then I usually use the example of we can have 2 bags of sample next to each other, and then we can simply measure the protein with NIR in 2 minutes, and they will have the same protein content. But when we sell that wheat to baker, when they are a milling company, they will be milling, and then they will be baking. Bakers are going to bake that flour, and then they actually can have difference in the baking performance, even though they have the same protein content. Why? Because the composition of the protein is different between those two wheat samples. So what are the proteins in wheat? We call that gluten forming proteins are the functional proteins in wheat that we pay attention to. And then there are 2 major subclasses of gluten forming proteins. So we don't have gluten in the flour, right? We don't have gluten in the flour, we have gluten forming proteins. And then when we add water and then mix, we have to introduce energy. So we have to have water, and then we have to introduce energy. Then we start to develop gluten. So those 2 subclasses of glutens, we call them gliadins and glutenins. So glutenins and gliadins, they start to interact with each other, and they are forming the gluten. But the life is never that simple, because then we have also subclasses of glutenins and subclasses of gliadins. I am not going to go so deeper into this topic, but there are certain subclasses, especially in the glutenin proteins. We call them high molecular weight glutenins. Those are especially important for bread baking quality. So we can have 2 bags of wheat samples with the same protein content, but if the one bag has higher portion of the high molecular weight glutenins, when I bake bread from that wheat sample, it's going to be better. It's going to be a bigger loaf of bread. It's going to hold more water when we are making the dough. And higher the water absorption is always more appreciated by bakers. It's better the quality. And again, I am only talking for bread wheat varieties. This water and then the high protein is a different story for soft wheat classes. But for hard wheat, so there are certain types of proteins that we want to have in the spring wheat varieties, so that they can actually have better baking performance. And then farmers, when they are making the decision, we always tell them this quality information. I interact with farmer groups. I never have told them, do not grow this variety or please grow this variety. We do not say that. We provide the information. And then I also say, this is the type of wheat that your customer wants.
Great, thank you. I actually like explaining to people that flour is actually, or wheat flour is actually an ingredient because it has different uses, and we have different classes specifically for all the different uses. Mm-hmm. And then you have the blends, right? But yes, one of the things I always tell my students when or the people who I train, one thing that you told me in one of your classes, that all-purpose flour is no-purpose flour.
Yeah, I know, and milling companies may not like it. The reason we have to open a parenthesis here. The reason I say that, because if someone who just bakes casually, and then they just want to buy a flour, and they say, okay, I will just buy all-purpose flour. If I want to make cookie, I will use for cookie. If I want to make bread, cake, I can just use it for everything because it's all-purpose. And then, so you know the story. It has low protein, so you will be making an edible bread, but it's going to be not an excellent bread. And then for its protein is too little low for bread, and it's little high for cakes and cookies. So you will be always making something okay. And maybe if you are okay being okay, it's okay.